Welcome to Daily 5 for Tuesday, July 4th, 2023. I recently finished reading a book called The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. I think I've pronounced that correctly, but I'll have a link to the book so that you can go and find it, so don't worry about trying to spell it based off my pronunciation. And this is a book that I think would best be described as a multi-generational space opera, maybe? At least science fiction. It's definitely multi-generational, I know that for sure. Because it basically takes place across three different slices of time in the lifespan of a planet. I would call it probably the middle part of the lifespan of a planet called Sask-E, S-A-S-K-E, I think. And so when we start the book, this is a planet that we're at some point in the far future where human beings are able to terraform, hence the title, planets. And we start off the book as on a planet, this planet of Sask-E, that has already been developed, has a full ecosystem that is maintained by a group of people called the ERT Rangers, which their function is to keep the ecosystem in balance. So we start off as the planet is just on the cusp of being developed by the company, the corporation that owns the rights to the planet, and then there's an event that happens, and then we jump to what you could probably call the middle of the planet's life, at least in terms of this story and what's going on, where we see the repercussions of the event that happened in the first part. It's basically a 3-act structure. So after the first act, we see the repercussions of the events that happened there, and then there is a new development that happens in the course of the middle section that then ripples into the final act. And we cover different generations, as I said, different people who some last all the way to the book, some don't, because in this particular book, human beings or beings that human beings create, because they are now capable of creating organisms that are humanoid and have different lifespans of hundreds of years in some cases. Even though there is still death, you can live far longer than normal human beings can now. And so we see what I would call the middle slice of this planet's life. And the book itself it's very clear that the author had some particular messaging that the book was meant to convey. So you will pick up very, very distinct themes in this book. This is a capital M message book, which isn't necessarily bad, but most people will probably pick up that the messaging is more important than a coherent narrative. Now, I don't say that as if the book isn't something you can follow. You can absolutely follow the book. But it definitely does things where you could see somebody coming in and saying, okay, the bones of this are good, it's solid, I've got the themes I want to convey, but some of this is going to be a little clunky for people to follow. So let me refine this a bit. If, in fact, the end goal was to make sure that the narrative was airtight, that the storytelling, I guess I should say, was smooth beginning to end. But I'm pretty sure that was not the intent. The intent was, I want to say things about A, B, and C, and I know a story that will let me get those messages across. Now, again, that's not a bad thing. I actually like the messaging in this book quite a bit, so I really don't care about kind of overcoming some of the bumps in the road that the narrative has. It really doesn't bother me. But I could see some people, and I have heard some people complain about the fact that, yeah, it's easy to get lost in this book. And I absolutely can see that. It's not as bad as, say, Neil Stephenson's Anathem, which I think is the one that had the appendix at the end that you would have to constantly refer to. Yeah, that was too much. I couldn't make it through that. That was, I'll freely admit, too smart for me, I guess, because I got to a point I went, nope, I give up. I'm not going to, reading should not be this much work. And so I kind of just gave up on it. It's not that bad, but it definitely has shades where I thought of, okay, this is getting close to needing an appendix or, a complete map system to follow what's going on. And there are maps in the book, which of course makes it tough if you're listening to it because there aren't maps in the audiobook as far as I'm aware. You can't do that yet. They can't project maps into your brain. So I went, okay, this is getting close to needing its own separate section, but it never quite crossed the line, so I never really cared. Again, I like the messages and the themes that the book was talking about. Now, if you don't, then you're probably not going to make it that far into this book because not only will you not appreciate the storytelling, but you're not going to like the messaging either. So certain people will probably never make it that far into this book. And that's too bad because I think what the book lays out is actually very interesting to consider if it ever were to be something that was, true or some variation became true of this. So I enjoyed it. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be for everybody. Not everybody might enjoy it as much as I did, but I would say if you're willing to take a chance and kind of bear with it a bit, The Terraformers, Annalee Newitz is worth reading. Later.